Today, I want to talk about design alternatives in this series where I talk about software development while I work on my bonsai trees. And I often find that working on bonsai trees can be a metaphor for software development, although it's sometimes a little bit far-fetched. Here you can see a dead branch. I killed it because I wired it wrongly, and now this branch is missing in the design of the tree. It was there to fill this area, and now there's nothing, and there would be a hole in the tree if I leave it like that. So what can I do instead? Let's take a look at the tree. I could use either this branch here and move it a little bit more to the back of the tree, or I could use this branch here and move it to the back of the tree. Both are feasible, but I don't have to decide right now. The only thing that's totally certain right now is that this branch has to go. Both in software development and in growing bonsai, not everything will work out as we've planned it. In this case, since this is one of my more refined trees, it's a little bit sad because it sets this tree back, but also the design of this tree is far from finished yet, so it will need another 3 to 5 years until it's the tree that I want it to be anyway. In software development, sometimes we don't find the right design for a problem right away. We have to experiment and iterate, because sometimes it is not even knowable what the right design is when we work on something really new. The key to moving on here is to treat things as experiments, and when something goes wrong, then to correct it and to keep the learning. So what I'm doing here now is I will slowly unwire this dead branch so that I can remove it later, and then we can talk about design alternatives for this tree. In one of my previous videos, I've talked about 3x thinking and how there's different phases of product development, and that some of them need more experimentation than others. So when you're in the explore phase, where you're still trying to find new ideas, then almost all of what you do will be experimentation. And then there's no problem at all when one of your experiments fails, because you expect most of them to fail. When you're in a later phase, like in this tree, this is already in the refinement phase. In the 3x model, we would call this the extract phase. Then you usually don't experiment anymore, but still things can go wrong. Some design might not work or not work anymore because the world has changed, and a design that used to work now doesn't work anymore. And in this case, you have to think about alternatives. And by design, I mean basically the internal structure of the software, the architecture, or the internal design of our modules. So when this happens, we just move on. We try to remove what wasn't working anymore and then try to find a better way to make the design work. And that's basically what I'm going to do here. So, for example, in software development, we often want to maximize cohesion, to move things that belong together, closer together, and to minimize coupling, which in a very simplified sense means to move things that don't belong together further apart, or to remove the dependencies between them. And what belongs together, or what should be moved apart, depends on our current understanding of the world we live in and on our current understanding of our requirements. And since the world can change and the requirements can change and will change, how we treated coupling and cohesion in the past might not work anymore. And then we also have to think about design alternatives. We might change the structure of our software, the modules, and how they communicate with each other. We might move from a monolithic approach to self-contained systems or microservices. We might add or remove services or change the way how services work together. This is actually the way things should work. But some teams, some companies treat this as a failure. They treat it as a failure that we have to change a design that we implemented in the past. They treat this as something to avoid. This is a very change-averse way of developing software, which can work quite well for some time, but it moves all the problems to a later point in time. So it might work well for some time, but then it usually breaks down spectacularly, because then all the design choices that we didn't make but that we should have made, all the possibilities that we had to fix our design but that we didn't take, then come back to haunt us. So the problem here is that when this approach, this change-averse approach, stops to work, it usually fails spectacularly. How can I fix the design here? I basically have to remove this branch. I will do that in a later video, and then I can either move this branch here to the back or this branch. I will not decide now, because the way how I killed this branch was that I bent it too much at a time where I shouldn't have bent it. I wired it and bent it in spring, and there it just was too much, and it snapped a little bit here, which killed off the whole branch. So this time I will do it in fall, where the tree will probably respond a lot better to the bending, and I will also use some tape to protect the branch. And maybe I will even bend both branches to the back here to fill out this space, and then I can let them grow for a year or two, and then only then decide whether to keep one, the other, or both of them. And that's something we can do in software development too. We often don't have to decide right away. Often the correct approach is to create options. What I'm doing here with bending both branches in autumn. This creates options for the future, and I can defer my decision to a later point in time without compromising my design. So anytime we can create options for the future without compromising the future or the present, we should do that. So in conclusion, when a design is not working anymore, like in this case where I killed the branch where I was responsible for the design not work anymore, or in the other case because the world has changed and the design that did work before doesn't work anymore because some external things have changed. When this happens, we have to take steps to correct the failing design. And if we don't do that, we move the problems to a later point where they will become more severe. Have you experienced this in the past? That not taking a design decision came back later to haunt you and came back in a way where it was worse than if you had tackled it at the right time? Please tell me in the comments, tell me your stories. I love to hear from you. And I will see you later in another video with this tree or a different tree, where I will talk about software development while working on my bonsai trees.